Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates.
You know, for the vast majority of our history as human beings, we didn't have writing. We couldn't write stuff down and read books and check out users' manuals. So everything of importance all throughout history, for the vast majority of our existence as a species, came to us through the spoken word. And by the way, it wasn't just big, long lists of stuff, because people are not good at remembering big, long lists of stuff. It all came in the form of stories. And that was the way that human beings could remember things that were complicated and required more than about 3 or 4 steps. So spoken communication and conversations, to me, are still just the absolute most core piece of being human and human interaction. So welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast. This is John Bates. I appreciate your attention and I appreciate your time, and I treat them both with utter respect, and I'm committed to making your investment of time and attention vastly worth it. If you don't know me, I'll tell you quickly where I'm coming from, because I think it might color everything that you hear in this podcast. I have always been the guy who had the soft skills, and I worked with a lot of people who had the hard skills. I was always an early stage employee at internet startups, so either a single digit employee or a founder or a co-founder. And with my teams, I raised several $100 million in Silicon Valley and beyond, and was part of the core team there, but everybody called what I did fluffy. So I kind of had a chip on my shoulder, and I'd go around trying to prove that I was valuable while I secretly felt like I was less valuable, and it was just awkward. And then in 2009, I went to the TED conference for the first time and just saw unbelievable speech after unbelievable speech. And I came home. So first thing I realized is, okay, I've basically been a public speaker my whole life, but I have not been doing that. So I came back home. I got very involved in the TED and TEDx community. And at one of the first ever TEDx events, I was volunteering for my friends who were running it. It was TEDx Santa Monica. And we had this guy who had all the hard skills in the world, and he had a really interesting topic. And he was the guy that I was the most interested in seeing that day. But when he got up on stage and started to speak, everybody in the audience checked out because he was so nervous and awkward that we all thought we were going to throw up. And I just remember being really sad at first, because I had seen that so much in my career. People who were brilliant and so well educated and who'd made such an investment in themselves and their knowledge and had so much to offer, but they just couldn't seem to close the gap between their mouth and someone else's ears. And it was just sad. And then the evil part of me kicked in. And I remember sitting in the back of the auditorium there, chuckling and snickering to myself silently, ha, 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 hard skills guys, blowing it. And as I was doing that, my buddy Michael Weiss walked over, and he bent down and he said something to me that just completely changed my life. He said, "Dude, we got to do something to help people like this." And I'll never forget that moment, because it was like the clouds parted, the angels sang, and I realized that if I just got over myself for just a few minutes, I could totally make a difference for that guy. If I stopped honoring the chip on my shoulder and got rid of that thing and started honoring the people right in front of me. So I went home and I started working on what I now deliver all over the world. I've gotten to train the NASA astronauts. I train Navy Special Operations here in the U.S. I've trained Boston Scientific. I train for Johnson & Johnson. I coach executives that are global, forward-thinking leaders all over the planet. And it's all because of that moment. Because before that moment, I was just an entrepreneur who had $50,000 in personal debt and a bunch of totally useless stock. And that was basically my whole life. But after that moment, I got on the path to doing what I'm doing now. And I feel like I found my ikigai, like where everything comes together and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So what that moment changed, though, is it made me realize that if I wanted to make a difference, if I really wanted to make a difference, I would need to base everything I did in human evolutionary biology and human neurophysiology, so I could show people not only what works, but also why it works based in science. And that just changed everything. And as a soft skills guy, I still have to laugh. It took me a few years to realize that, like, there's a reason this stuff works every time. Yeah, it's based in science. Like, that's why we like science. That's the lens through which I view the world. So I believe that leadership is a function of communication, and great leadership is a function of great communication. So in this podcast, I bring some of the most amazing, influential, forward-thinking global leaders that I can to the mic, and we have a conversation about just what in the world leadership communication even is in the first place. And we get to hear some of their stories. We get to hear some of the things that have made a difference for them, some of the processes that have contributed to their successes. And we get to hear some of the places where they failed and what they learned from that, and some of the things that help them live a life of making a difference. And that's the ultimate goal for me with this, is to give you nuggets and tools, hand you the lightsaber, and have you go on your hero's journey and make a difference out there in the world. So my why is to bring out what's awesome inside every person so it can live in the world and make a real difference. And I am committed to having this podcast be something that you love to listen to, that you get a lot out of, and that makes a difference for you for the rest of your life. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your attention. This is John Bates, and we'll see you at the Speak Like a Leader podcast.
Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.